News Roundup.
Raised in the church, grew up with all.
Okay, everybody, welcome to the Mormon News Roundup. I've got a couple of technical difficulties, but glad to have you with me. We do have a big episode tonight. First of all, I want to give a shout out to Doug Vincent. Thanks so much, my friend. This should top out your coffeeers. Really appreciate that. That means a lot. I want to say hello out there. Mark Crispin, thanks for joining the program. Cultural Hall, great to see you. Got a great channel. Tim, nice to see you once again. Alan, good evening. Peter, I see you there. Thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. We do have a big episode. If you want to join this episode, we will be having an after show after the show has actually started. If you follow the link, you can join the program and contact your humble host here. Let's get this party started. Hopefully I can figure this out. Let's go.
Welcome to the Mormon News Roundup, your go-to source for the latest headlines and critical analysis on all things LDS.
Breaking news.
Join D-Vay's
Mormon News Roundup.
That's talent on loan from Kolob every Sunday and Monday night.
We will uncover the truth behind the news that matters most to the Mormon community.
Welcome back to the Mormon News Roundup. It's August 18th, 2024. This is episode number 128. We got a lot of things on tap for you today. First of all, we have a lot of temples. We got lawsuits. We got endowment changes. We got Mormon TikTok swingers. We got gospel topics essays. We got a lot of things going on. I'm your humble host, D-Days, and that is talent on loan from Kolob. And I'm joined by my fabulous co-host, Doug. Doug, how you doing?
Fine, man. How are you?
Hey, better than I deserve. We're going to go ahead and jump right on in here to the episode. August 18th, Mormon News Roundup with Doug Vincent. Doug, who are you? What are you all about? What's your 1 minute Mormon story?
A 1 minute Mormon story. My parents joined the church when I was like 6.5 or 7. So I've pretty much been raised in the church. Grew up with all the normal priesthood ordinations, etc. I went on a mission to Idaho and came back, went to school at BYU for a while, dropped out of BYU because I was just bored with school. And I became a gemologist. I worked in that for a few years. Then I wound up getting involved in a computer company, and I've been there ever since working with software. And I currently work for the state of Texas.
Oh, that sounds fantastic. We're glad to have you onto the program. You know, I showed my wife saw this thumbnail, by the way. She said that you look like a very handsome Santa. How do you feel about that?
People call me Santa sometimes. I've had little kids call me Santa. So
very nice. Mormon Insider spills the tea. And what are we going to be talking about in particular in this episode here, Doug? What are we going over?
Well, we have temples to talk about, some temple controversies, lawsuits, some endowment changes. That was a big one this week. The new Mormon TikTok swinger show, the Mormon moms, and some gospel topic changes.
Very fascinating stuff here. We're going to give it to you down and dirty. We're going to give it to you quite fast. The Mormon wives have arrived here. We have Taylor, Frankie Paul, and a number of these other folks. This is the so-called hashtag Mom Talk Stars. Meet the secret lives of Mormon wives cast. This is covered on E! News, and believe it or not, this is the #1 news story of the week. You know, a lot of faithful Latter-day Saints out there, they don't track this stuff, but believe me, this is like catnip for the media. They really follow this stuff. Let's see what's going on here with the series, which is about to launch here in just about 2 weeks on E! Let's see what's going on with Taylor, Frankie Paul, and the rest of the shenanigans that are associated with these guys. It's going to be really juicy.
Fox's most famous stars are setting the record straight. Hulu's new docuseries, The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, will take us inside the shocking sex scandal that rocked a community of rule-breaking Mormon TikTok influencers back in 2022. The most recognizable member of the cast, Taylor Frankie Paul, made headlines 2 years ago when she revealed that she and her then-husband, Tate Paul, participated in a soft swinging group with other members in the Mormon Mom Talk community. Taylor, who has since gotten divorced and had a baby with boyfriend Dakota Mortensen, also implicated several other Mormon mom influencers in her content creating group of swapping partners and engaging in sexual acts outside of marriage. So how did the group of TikTok's most famous Mormon influencers pick up the pieces from Taylor's scandals? That's exactly what she and fellow mom talkers Demi, Jen, Jesse, Whitney, Michaela, Macy, and Layla will document. The 8 stars of the series are already featured in Mom Talk-style videos on Hulu's social media, and a press release describes the show as their sisterhood is shook to the core. Faith, friendship, and reputations are all on the line. Will Mom Talk be able to survive and continue to give the rulebook a run for its money, or will the group fall from grace? We'll find out when The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives premieres on Hulu September 6th. Now meet the moms and get their content creator stats.
Okay, we'll talk over this part. Doug, what do you think about this show so far? Why is so many people going to tune into this?
Well, I mean, it's kind of scandalous to start with. Lots of very good-looking young ladies there. young moms. And for some reason, Mormon reality shows are big. I think the Sister Wives program is entering its 19th season this year. 19 years. It's just incredible. So Mormon shows have staying power. So I think that's what we're going to see here.
I didn't even know the Cody Brown and the Sister Wives show was still going. I watched the first few seasons of that before they moved to Nevada. I had no idea it was still going. You know, the biggest genres out there, as far as Mormonism is concerned, is true crime. You know, like Warren Jeffs, like, Murder Among the Mormons, Under the Banner of Heaven, that type of stuff. Those are big. And then these type of scandals as well. I actually showed my wife this trailer as well. And she goes, these are really bad Mormons. Why do people tune in to watch these people? Why are people so fascinated by Mormons behaving badly? What's the deal with that?
Probably because they're not supposed to be behaving badly. And the church has all these high standards. And so when these things come out that people are not really doing that, it's a kind of a shock.
When this show was originally announced, I actually had Jana Reese from the Religion News Service on the program, and she actually wrote an article about this. And she's a very professional journalist, but when it came to this article, she kind of got under her skin a little bit, and she says, this is not reality. This does not happen. You need to understand that this is like literally less than 0.1%. This really gets into some people's goats, and especially the true believing members, they want to distance themselves from this type of programs. Taylor Frankie Paul has 4 million followers on Instagram. Wow. When people think of Mormons, a lot of times this is what they think of. 2 things. Number one, they think of people who practice polygamy. And number 2, this is who they think of as the Real Housewives of Salt Lake City, and also these Mom Talk stars, because that's who they're familiar with. They don't know anything about General Conference, and they certainly have never heard of Russell M. Nelson. Any last thoughts here on this the Mormon wives and their soft swinging and the scandals and everything associated with this?
I think it's going to be a hit.
Yeah, it's going to have a lot of eyeballs. These producers are smart. They know what is going to get the eyeballs. Meet the Mormons 2014, that officially church-produced video, that movie that they put into all those theaters, that got no views. It only made a couple of $1 million. It was an absolute joke. This is going to absolutely turn the headlines without question here. Whitecat Prophecy actually tweeted out about this. He's one of my favorite parody accounts out there. He actually appeared on the Mormon News Roundup once upon a time. It's a play on words of the famous white horse prophecy, but this is what he said. The new series will focus on the extent to which Latter-day Saint women perform a disproportionate level of unpaid emotional labor in their marriages, often in ways that go unseen and unappreciated, stated Hulu about the project. Obviously, that is a joke, but he launched a new website out there that's called At the Lord's Newsroom, which has a lot of parody accounts. I don't think that's what they're going to be talking about. I don't think, Doug.
Probably not.
Yeah, that's not going to they're going to be talking about their soft swinging. And just for those of you out there, unfortunately, I had to look this up. Soft swinging is where you have essentially an open marriage where you can do almost anything except for go all the way. You can go to first, second, or third base or whatever it is, but as long as you don't hit a home run, everything is above board. Taylor Frankie Paul has an incredibly poor track record, honestly, as a person. She was arrested for domestic violence. She threw a chair at her boyfriend and it hit a child. She got arrested. These are the type of people, when people think of Mormons, this is who we're thinking about, as soft swingers and people arrested for domestic violence. It's a little bit sad.
That is sad.
I will probably be tuning in for this one. I think there's 6 episodes that are set. So definitely going to watch it, see what's going on there. This is also a more serious article here. Dissident plaintiffs can't speak for all members. LDS Church argues in seeking to block a tithing lawsuit. The Utah-based faith works to halt a sharing of evidence until a federal judge rules on an expected push to toss out the class action case. There's been a number of class action, not necessarily class action, but there's been like 9 cases for tithing refund lawsuits against the church that have been rolled into one case. It's been moved to Salt Lake City under the auspices of Judge Shelby. And it looks like we've got the first little bit of this where the church is arguing here that the plaintiffs here can't sue the church because they're mostly ex-members. How do you feel about that, Doug?
Well, first of all, when I read this, I was really surprised because it seems like a weak argument. The class is not all members of the church. The class is members of the church who pay tithing. These are just as viable as active members. It doesn't matter if you're active or not active. This is about tithe payers. Yeah.
It doesn't even matter if you're a member of the church at all. It's anyone who's given a donation to the church. And there are some people out there who give donations to the church who are not members. It does not matter if you're a member or not. If you think that the church is engaged in fraudulent activity, saying, I gave the money to the church under the auspice that it would be used for X because the church told me X, and it turned out that it was diverted to a luxury mall or bailed out to for-profit businesses, or it was basically plowed into the stock market, that could be considered fraud. So it doesn't matter if you're a member or not. So I don't understand the argument here. I'm not a lawyer, but it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Let me read this to you, get your reaction here. A new court filing makes it clear that the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is treating a class action lawsuit over tithing as a multi-pronged attack on religious freedom. In arguments unveiled Friday, church lawyers are urging U.S. District Judge Robert Shelby in Salt Lake City to put any court-sanctioned evidentiary probes in the newly formed case on hold until he can rule on an upcoming motion to throw out the fraud allegations. In moving to block the process known as discovery, the Utah-based faith attorneys are promising to mount a formidable challenge in September, outlining how core lines of arguments in the high-profile case jeopardize the U.S. Constitution's legal shields against intrusions into matters of religious belief. Anytime the church gets sued for almost anything, they almost always go to the First Amendment and they cite religious beliefs. Does that carry weight in this particular case, do you think, Doug?
It's typical. Everything is an attack on their religious freedom. But this time, I don't see how you can say that somebody who's disgruntled with the way the church has handled their finances is attacking religious freedom. How does that work?
It doesn't seem to be a case of religion. It seems to be a case of fraud. Those two things seem to be separate.
Yeah.
And the church never wants to give any discovery. We learned that from the James Huntsman lawsuit, where James Huntsman said, we need to see the discovery of the church to see how much they're worth, to see what they've done with their finances. And the church resisted that in the legal proceedings of that. They said that it would do undue harm to the church by having discovery. The church doesn't want to have discovery because once you have discovery, those items will be made public and we'll be able to see what's going on behind the scenes in an official capacity instead of just through leaked documents like David Nielsen. And the church wants to avoid that at all costs.
Absolutely. The first rule of the patriarchy is to protect the patriarchy.
Yeah, and this is what it says too: claims of fraud and a slush fund. 9 plaintiffs in 5 states are suing the global church and investment arm Ensign Peak Advisors, alleging that senior church leaders and their money managers lied for decades about using member tithing donations solely for charitable causes, while instead investing the cash into a multi-billion-dollar slush fund. Boy, that doesn't sound very good here, Doug. Slush fund and the church going together. Is there any credibility to these lawsuit allegations, or just ex-Mormons trying to get their money back and grinding an axe?
I think there's credibility to it. The whistleblower report, as you're probably familiar with, he cited specifically some IRS rules that charities have to use the money to benefit the general public in some way, whether it's religious, educational, or charitable. These funds have just been sitting for 22 years in this quote-unquote slush fund as they play the stock market with it. So there's no charitable or religious or educational purpose that this money has ever been applied to. I think it's open for interpretation. This one has a better chance, I think, of many for getting some sort of a toehold, but it's really difficult to sue a church, especially one as powerful as the LDS Church.
Yeah, I mean, these are part of really what are called kind of the copycat lawsuits. Once James Huntsman, when his tithing refund lawsuit got a small bit of daylight by having the appeals court uphold a portion of his lawsuit, all of a sudden the copycat lawsuits are rolling in, and this is what we're getting from this. So it's going to be fascinating to watch this. You know, Ensign Peak Advisors is considered an auxiliary of the church. It's also a nonprofit. And to be an auxiliary and to keep your tax exempt status, you need to engage in some kind of humanitarian, charitable, or educational purposes to help the institution that you're the auxiliary for. And David Nielsen's allegations is that Ensign Peak has not ever once engaged in anything whatsoever that could be considered helping the actual mission of the church. Instead, all it is a clandestine illegal hedge fund that was used to grow tens of billions of dollars, and that goes against IRS tax code. And that's what these lawsuits are saying, is that I didn't realize I was investing into an investment fund. I thought that I was giving my donations to alleviate the human suffering on this planet, and instead all it did was to go to shareholders of Tesla and Apple and enrich people like Elon Musk. That's not what I signed up for. That's considered fraud. The plaintiffs here are trying to make this be an issue of fraud, and the church is trying to make it an issue of religious freedom. This is the age-old struggle between these two. And Brother Mike here, before I give you the last take here, he says they're blocking the discovery in the class action suit. They really want to dismiss this right off the bat, and they definitely don't want to go through a discovery process because that could potentially become public knowledge. Church wants to avoid that at all costs here. Any last thoughts here on this particular article here, Doug?
The discovery would be a bombshell for sure. Considering what we've learned about Ensign Peak, I think it would be a bombshell.
Instead of just having kind of speculative rumors. Now, I personally trust David Nielsen, but we can't necessarily confirm everything that he's put forward. It seems like everything that he has said has come to pass and has been true, but that's still not the church in legal proceedings being brought to the table, putting the feet to the fire and saying, what is the discovery? What are the finances? What happened along with this? That would be a huge deal. And as I've said many times before, it is only a matter of time until we get more documents that somebody who's going to leak everything. I mean, we're going to know everything at some point in time for the church finances. Somebody's going to have a thumb drive at some point who's going to give it all to us. So why not just get ahead of the game now, have transparency with the members? That way we don't have a breach in confidence. Nemo also weighed in on this too. He said, Mormon church, no tithing for refunds. Let's see what Nemo, he weighed in on this particular lawsuit. Let's see what he has to say.
Ready for the latest update on people suing the Mormon church to get their tithing donations back? According to the Salt Lake Tribune, the church are trying to dismiss those bringing the lawsuit as not able to represent the class of tithe-paying members because they do not share the faith of tithe-paying members. However, surely the defining characteristic of the class is not current faith in the doctrines of the church, but is the characteristic of having paid tithing to the church at some point in one's life. And as for the church's other assertions around this, that the latest lawsuits are merely copycats, well, the church would know all about copycats, wouldn't they? Having cloned one limited liability company into several limited liability companies in order to avoid disclosure of the size and nature of the assets that they held in Ensign Peak Advisors. We'll have to wait and see if the church's arguments hold sway.
Some of the people who are seeking their tithing back are currently active members of the church who are continuing to pay tithing. This isn't just ex-Mormons grinding an axe. There are true believing members of the church who also said, I didn't sign up to build a luxury mall with my donation. I wanted my donations to help people, and instead, they're not. That's the entire issue here.
All I have to say is touche to Nemo on the LLC making the shell companies. That was a nice little dig there.
And Nemo definitely has a lot of great takes. His shorts are absolutely great for sure. Also, this week, we also had a very interesting update here, and I tweeted this out, and it got a lot of views. New updates to LDS Temple Endowment ceremony today. This just happened a couple of days ago, and I guess I toot my own horn because I have a contact that's overseas. It was in Thailand. Right after the first temple session in Thailand, he tweeted that out to me, and I got that out almost as fast as anybody else. I might have been the first one to get that out there, but the total ceremony time has been cut down once again from 20 minutes by removing repetitious language. The total time cut down is from 90 minutes. Now it is down to 70 minutes. And I do have a faithful member here who's going to give us his opinion about these changes. It's under Instagram under find.christ. There's been a few modifications made to the temple endowment ceremony. Let's see what his take is. For watching this before, he said the nail in the sure place. I didn't know you were allowed to talk about that.
I didn't either, but here he is.
Well, it's a very faithful account here. It seems like members are becoming more and more comfortable talking about what happens in the temple. I'm looking at my moniker here that says not new name Noah. That is a tip to Mike Norton because everybody knows what happens in the temple. And in fact, even in the church's handbook of instruction now, it says that the 5 promises that you make in the temple, which is much improved. At least you have an idea about what you're promising in the temple now, as opposed to when I went through back in the 1990s. So I guess people are just a little bit more comfortable these days.
Evidently. And I was kind of watching that clip and chuckling to myself because he has the mood music going on behind him. You know, he's trying to copy what the church does when they make their videos. Shortening the temple ceremony, great. Good for it.
Yeah, without question. And the Salt Lake Tribune, in my opinion, was quite late to the game on this. They didn't release this until just yesterday. That was like 5 days after it happened. That's why the Mormon News Roundup is your #1 source for LDS news. We beat the Salt Lake Tribune to this. Yes, 15 minutes trimmed off the temple endowment ceremony. And I do have a couple of takes here. Brian Mortensen on Twitter says, I support all efficiency gains to the temple apart from the removal of the movie quality. Going back to paintings of the creation period sucks. We need big budget CGI music and acting. That's the whole problem here, is that we went back to the stills. It's basically a film strip, took a giant step back. What we need here, honestly, Doug, is big budget. I'm talking about CGI. I'm talking about blow your mind. I don't know, 3D glasses. I'm talking about an immersive experience here. Think Avatar CGI Adam and Eve. Maybe not blue lions, but you get the idea. Something that is really, really impressive, not a snooze fest. That's what we need in the Mormon temple endowment.
I agree. When I was going to the temple, we had the films. There's some pretty good acting on the part of a few of the characters. There's no reason for the church to go low budget with a film strip.
This ain't 1970, man. Come on. Use
Man,
that
that guy
Ensign
was
P.
amazing.
Yeah, and this is the whole point here. This was the best actor here. Michael Ballard is a legend. He was Lucifer. Unfortunately, he got arrested for a DUI. He's really playing the part in real life. That's all I can say. But Rebecca Biblioteca said, it looks like he shortened the endowment, took effect yesterday. It's 20 minutes shorter, and they removed some of the speaking parts. In fact, Satan has been, once again, significantly demoted and reduced. His speaking parts have been removed. Michael Ballard, he's no longer a part of the temple endowment ceremony. They shot his particular part in 1988/1990. There were 2 versions of the endowment that were shot during that time, and he was Satan in one of those versions. And that version was circulated for over 20 years. I did a Mormon movie review of the Mormon Temple Endowment film. I believe it is episode 25, where I talked about the 7 different versions of the Mormon Temple Endowment movie. Satan's on the out here. That's the problem here, Doug. This was the best part of the movie, was Lucifer being in the action, especially Michael Ballard, and they took out the best part.
I agree. I always look forward to seeing him come on the screen. He was very Shakespearean in the way he acted, and I just thought that was apropos in the setting.
Yeah, he did a fantastic job, but the problem here is that, temple ordinances, the most sacred of all ordinances, have changed so frequently and so substantially since their inception that members see it as no big deal anymore. And that's part of the ongoing restoration. But this is the problem. If you go back to the prophet Joseph Smith, taught that ordinances instituted in the heavens before the foundation of the world and the priesthood for the salvation of men are not to be altered or changed. And yet Russell M. Nelson has continuously altered them. Even just 2 years ago, he made it less sexist, and he's made a lot of changes. Even just about a year ago, he made an introduction. It included symbology. President Nelson has tackled the most holy or sacred cow of Mormonism, and he feels no compunction about shortening things or doing things his way. He has left an indelible mark on the church.
I think they're trying to make it less weird. I think a lot of people were weirded out by the temple. It was one of those faith destroying things for them when they went, because they were completely unprepared for it. I know when I went through, I was not prepared. I went through in 1977. We had the penalties and all that other stuff, all the bloody stuff. They've taken all of that out. They've changed the initiatory completely. They've changed how the women, their speaking parts, their covenants. They've really taken an axe to it. In some ways it's good. It's less alienating, but also, like you said, it's like we have precedent from other prophets that said, don't ever change this stuff.
Over there at Scripture Plus, Jasmine is going to take a crack at this. Let's see what she has to say about the temple endowment changes.
Of the temple endowment do not affect the underlying truth of the covenants or the meat of what the endowment's trying to do. The endowment is a beautiful ancient ritual drama that helps us learn about our relationship with Jesus Christ and Heavenly Father while we navigate being mortals here on earth. The doctrines stay the same, but sometimes the format changes, that we can understand those doctrines even better for our modern circumstances according to our language, unto our understanding. Kind of like reading the same Book of Mormon, but reading the 1830 edition. Same doctrine, but it's a different format. I noticed different things. In the Old Testament, the Israelites followed the law of Moses for hundreds of years until Jesus Christ came and said the gospel's the same, but we are instituting a new symbol or a new presentation of the gospel in the form of the Last Supper or the sacrament. Even in our own history, temple ordinances have never been static. Joseph Smith learned line upon line throughout his life to unfold the restoration, and that continues through the church today with baptism, the Kirtland endowment, then that progressed to the Nauvoo endowment. Brigham Young standardized things later on in the 19th century. Then we had changes and adaptations made in the 1920s, 1990s, 2005, 2019. It just keeps going. We are all part of this unfolding restoration as we gather Israel in real time. And if you want to learn more about the development of temple ordinances, you need to check out the Church History Matters podcast, where they did a series all about this.
How do you feel about Jasmine's apologetic regarding the changing of the temple ordinances over time?
Like you said, it's an apologetic. I wonder if she's ever read Brigham Young's lecture at the Veil that he instituted in the St. George Temple, where it talks about that Adam is our father and our God, that Eve was one of his polygamous wives. Wonder how she feels about that doctrine. They just skip over things like that to me are very consequential.
That's a very good point here. That is a core doctrine that has absolutely changed. As soon as Brigham Young died, they basically took that out right away in 1877. It was taken out immediately. And don't forget that it used to be that we used to have the oath of vengeance until the 1930s, where we used to promise to avenge the death of the prophet Joseph Smith and Hiram upon the inhabitants of Illinois. That was taken out. Now you don't have to promise that. Now you don't have to promise to avoid loud laughter as well. Women used to, in the temple, covenant to obey the law of their husband. Then it was changed to obey the law of their husband as they obey God. God. Now it's just obey God. People are swearing different things in the temples, as you mentioned, with the blood oaths of, the secrecy and different things. There's been fundamental changes about how this entire process has taken place, and people are swearing to different things throughout different periods of time. It's not core the same. It's been massively different. And the final takeaway from all of this is, what evidence is there at all that this does anything whatsoever? I understand what you believe, Jasmine. Why do you believe it, and why should anyone else believe it? Is there any evidence whatsoever that we need signs and tokens in order to pass the angels who stand as sentinels to gain our eternal exaltation in spite of earth and hell? Can you please give us some evidence for any of this? I would appreciate that. Any last thoughts on this entire temple endowment update, which is a big deal for a lot of faithful members?
Yeah, she said that this was an ancient thing, and there's no evidence that it was ancient. Nobody's ever found anything close to this in ancient scripture or ancient temple practices.
This is the parallel mania that Hugh Nibley and others would try to do. They would try to look through thousands upon thousands of pages of ancient documents from Syria, from Egypt, from different places, and then try to pull out a tiny kernel here that has some kind of a parallel to the LDS temple endowment ceremony and say, look, they believed in the same concept as us, but there's just no good reason to believe that the temple endowment went back to the Temple of Solomon. This is what the initial church members, if you read Cheryl Bruno's
Method Infinite,
and you trace the legacy of the Masonic heritage of the Temple Endowment Ceremony, which Joseph Smith clearly borrowed significant portions of. The 5 points of fellowship have been discontinued. There's been so many things that have been discontinued. Right. It doesn't go back to Solomon times. It only basically goes back to about the mid 1500s. This isn't an ancient construct. This is an example of people in the church who want to take the current version of Mormonism and then read that back into ancient documents, either in the Bible, either in the Book of Mormon, or in other cultures and civilizations, and say, look, this has been taught anciently, when it hasn't. It's a modern construct, and we can demonstrate that as it continuously changes all the time.
Agreed.
I typically don't cover the rumor mill here that much, but I keep hearing this from multiple sources here, Doug. You tell me if you put any stock of this. President Nelson health scare. We just had state conference, and I heard this from a bunch of different sources. I normally don't put this kind of rumor stuff in here, but there's something behind this. Look, the area president was newly called and met with other general authorities, and President Nelson was there at the meeting. He said President Nelson has drastically declined and couldn't speak more than a minute. And he conveyed his love to all of us, and then he had someone else read his remarks. He was in a wheelchair. Prayers for President Nelson. I have loved all that he has done to boldly move us as a church in a direction that prepares us for the second coming. And Nemo the Mormon said, will the area president get in trouble for sharing this? Could we please get a health update on President Nelson? Do you put any stock behind all of these rumors? Because they do seem to be swarming this week.
I think there might be some truth to them. It's very difficult to know because, like you said, it's a rumor mill. But we do know that he's been sick, been unable to attend conference at times, and he's almost 100 years old. So, you would expect some decline in health. It's impossible to know, but the church covers that kind of thing up. Ezra Taft Benson is a perfect example. They propped him up multiple times to take pictures and to try to show that he was okay when he was literally incoherent with dementia. Until conference time rolls around, we probably won't know anything.
And the church really did the same thing with Thomas Monson too. He gave a couple of general conference addresses that he really shouldn't have given because he kind of lost his train of thought. He was struggling with mental health issues. I believe it was dementia or Alzheimer's. I believe it was dementia. Having these old men here trying to give these coherent talks when they're this old is a significant challenge. And we saw in the last General Conference in particular that President Nelson really did what some people are considering to be kind of a deep fake, where he wasn't actually in the chair that he was supposed to be in. They kind of used some, I don't know if it was CGI or they digitally enhanced his addresses. Some people are even saying that they used auto tune to, clear up his appearance and things like that. We're starting to get some really creepy vibes here where we don't really know if President Nelson, what he's doing. That's very, very strange. And just one other thing about this is that every single year at the Missionary Training Center in Provo, Utah, they have the Missionary Training Center training that are given by the senior leaders of the church to the new mission presidents. They typically call, about 80 mission presidents per year to go out to the missions. And the church leadership, typically the first presidency goes to that. Well, once again, instead of attending in person, President Nelson in the last General Conference mailed in some of the sessions and did pre-recording talks. He did pre-recording talks at the Missionary Training Center, which is one of the most important events of the year. When is the last time that we saw President Nelson out in public doing anything? I mean, this is almost like Kim Jong-un level, trying to watch and see where he's at here. I mean, it is really, really creepy. Don't forget also, Doug, that President Nelson has not been out of the state of Utah except for one time in the last almost 5 years. He's only went out for a weekend once to dedicate the Washington, D.C. temple, not out of the U.S., out of Salt Lake City. He basically goes in between the Gateway Center, which is where his apartment is. He goes down the elevator, he walks across the tunnel, or I guess they wheel him across in a wheelchair. He goes up the tunnel into his office building, and that's where he is. He is not the Lord's prophet for our entire planet. He basically rules from North Temple until Insanity on 9000 South.
Yeah, that's amazing.
I do wish him the very best. But the last man standing doctrine is a very harmful doctrine. And it really goes back to, if you think about when President Hinckley was on Mike Wallace on 60 Minutes, Mike Wallace asked President Hinckley about the last man standing doctrine, because that's how you become the prophet. And he says, isn't this a bad way to run an organization that's worth $300 billion? Shouldn't we have fresher blood in here that can be able to actually minister to people and take care of the affairs and actually go to the meetings that you're supposed to go to? President Hinckley said, well, it's not a big deal as long as the leader of the church isn't daffy. But that's the problem here, is that we've seen it happen from time to time, again, from David O. McKay to Ezra Taft Benson to President Monson, President Hunter. They all have significant mental decline. That's a major issue. Any last thoughts on this one?
I wish that the church would give updates on realistic updates on the health of the leaders. I mean, everybody can understand if they're old and they're becoming incapacitated. I don't think anybody's going to hold that against them. There's no need for the charade that they typically do, trying to make him look like he's in better health than he is. Just be honest. You know, people are praying for them. They want to know. So I wish they would change that. I think it's kind of tacky.
Very well. Now, our next update here is lawsuit filed against the city of Las Vegas after approval of LDS Church near Lone Mountain. That was basically greased through in Lone Mountain. This is the second temple in Las Vegas. The church, through its law firm, paid these city council members political donations, which is perfectly legal, but somewhat ethically questionable, to get the zoning changed in Lone Mountain. It was approved, and it was basically a done deal. But wait a minute here. Lawsuit filed against the city of Las Vegas after approval. Let's see what's going on down there in Lone Mountain. That just reminds me of, for those of you out there, if you can go over to our Patreon site, make a donation, I'd be very grateful for that. And then I can sign up for YouTube Premium.
There you
go.
go.
Let's see.
Lawsuit against the city of Las Vegas after their approval of a proposal to build a new LDS temple near Lone Mountain.
Fox News' Kim Passoff has been going over it all and joins us now with the details of the suit.
Yeah, this is that lawsuit. A lot to go over here in 26 pages. The suit is filed on behalf of a group called the Rural Nevada Preservation Alliance, who say that they are property owners living near the site where the temple is set to be built. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is planning to build on 20 acres off of Alexander in Grand Canyon. After months of debate, last month, the city of Las Vegas approved the project with some design modifications to the 70,000 square foot temple, including limiting the height to 196 feet. In the lawsuit, the petitioners claim, quote, the city of Las Vegas abused its discretion and made errors of law, including the construction application. And the suit also says that back in 2003, the city of Las Vegas denied a request for a 77-foot cross at Canyon Ridge Church because it exceeded a 35-foot height requirement. Then again, in 2009, they denied the International Church of Las Vegas an 85-foot prayer tower. We're still going through this lawsuit.
So this is very interesting here to me, Doug.
Very
How is it that the city of Las Vegas is denying churches that have half the size of it and now approving a temple which is much, much larger and twice the size? How does that make any sense?
There might be some substance to this one. If they've denied other churches similar types of towers and spires, then they grant the church one that's like the biggest ever requested. There's a little something wrong there. And I wouldn't be surprised if these people have a case that takes hold.
I do wonder, Doug, did these other churches provide tens of thousands of dollars in donations to the political campaigns of the chairpersons? I wonder if they did that. I'm very much suspecting that they did not.
Yeah, I doubt it. And I think that I read somewhere where that is going to come into play in this complaint, is the donations to the town council.
Well, it just reminds me that the temple endowment was shortened and some of the Lucifer's language was gotten rid of. But his most famous line, in my opinion, in the temple endowment, which I hope they did not cut, is you can buy anything in this world with money, and that includes a temple in North Las Vegas. You know, it just seems like, Doug, that the church can't get a temple approved through like it used to. You know, is that the adversary causing problems, or is that the church trying to ram these incredibly large structures into residential areas in which they don't really belong?
I think it's the latter. The church just seems to want to build in these residential neighborhoods, and a lot of them have protections now. In the early days, I don't think there were many protections. restrictions for neighborhoods. I think this lawsuit might have some merits. The church seems to want to build in residential areas that have zoning restrictions rather than building in areas where a building like that would be welcome. And it's kind of disheartening to see this because it alienates so many people. I don't know how the church is doing an accounting of the bad will they're generating as opposed to getting the temple that they want. It doesn't seem to make any sense to me. They seem to be quite adamant about it. And they also seem to have lost the concept of a smaller temple, building smaller temples. Those seem to be able to fit into these residential neighborhoods. The one in here in Nashville, Tennessee is a smaller temple, and there was some concern about the steeple, but they overcame that pretty easily, and it's built right next to our Civic Center. I don't understand the latest push for monstrosities.
Yeah, and I bet that Nashville temple, what is the steeple height, including the steeple height, is maybe 60, 70 feet. Is that about right?
Yeah, it's about the same height as the spire on the Stake Center, and you've seen those before. It's not that high, probably 60 feet.
You can get a conditional use permit for a residential area and say, most residential areas are capped at around 40 feet. And oftentimes the church will get an approval for that type of thing. There's an order of magnitude difference between a 60-foot spire and a 190-foot spire. These are two totally different things. Now, I released a video here, Doug, this week, which is kind of conspiratorial, which talked about the Fairview temple, because it's not just Las Vegas where the church is having pushback on its massive structures here, but Fairview, Texas also has a number of issues that it has, and it has downvoted the church's desire to build a large structure in a residential area once again. And I put together this video, which is a little bit conspiratorial, and I want to get your thoughts on it. We're going to play that for you. It's the secret that no one is telling you about the Fairview temple. Let's check that out. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints can't back down on its controversial Fairview, Texas temple, nor change the building design in any meaningful way. This video will attempt to confirm that hypothesis with never before seen evidence and arguments.
Welcome to the Mormon News Roundup, your go-to source for the latest headlines and critical analysis on all things LDS.
Breaking news.
Join D-Vase,
Mormon News Roundup.
that's talent on loan from Kolob, every Sunday and Monday night.
We will uncover the truth behind the news that matters most to the Mormon community.
By way of background, the Fairview Temple project was initially referred to as the Prosper Texas Temple, and it was first announced with plans to build it in a location that attracted a lot of attention. The church hoped to greenlight their temple in this somewhat obscure Texas area. As the project evolved, it was rebranded to the McKinney Temple. This name change accompanied adjustments to the House of Worship's design and planning stages. During this period, the project faced increasing scrutiny and opposition from local communities.
I am inevitable.
Several controversies emerged as the project progressed. The height of the proposed temple became a significant point of contention. Local residents and officials were concerned about the temple's scale and its impact on the surrounding area. There were organized protests by local residents who opposed the construction, citing concerns about the temple's impact on community aesthetics and property values. In a notable development, the city council voted 7-0 to reject the temple project. The council's decision reflected widespread local opposition and concerns about the temple's integration into the community.
You can't stop me! You don't got the power.
Following the council's rejection, the temple's proponents filed a lawsuit against the city. This legal action aimed to challenge the council's decision and move forward with the project despite local resistance. The lawsuit has added a layer of complexity to the temple's development, leading to ongoing legal proceedings. The temple, now officially known as the Fairview Temple, has continued to move forward despite the controversies. The project remains a focal point of local debate and legal scrutiny, as the church has not given up on this house of the Lord. Now, we covered the Fairview Temple in depth in our last episode of the Mormon News Roundup, and you can also learn more about it by watching the Mormonish podcast or a recent episode of Mormon Stories.
But I like hanging out with you more.
But to understand the thesis of this video, we need to take a step back at how the church has changed how it builds temples in recent years.
Don't you just love history?
Specifically, we need to look at the Helena, Montana and Cody, Wyoming houses of the Lord. But before we do that, I'm D-Vase, and that's talent on loan from Kolob. I run the Mormon News Roundup and the Mormon movie reviews and premiere new content every Sunday and Monday nights at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
But that's enough about me.
When President Russell M. Nelson was called as president of the church in 2018, there was 159 temples in operation.
At this time, we have 159 functioning temples. and more are under construction. We want to bring temples closer to the expanding membership of the church.
Since that time, 133 new temples have been announced, along with numerous other temple restoration and construction projects around the world.
We are adapting to the counsel of a prophet, to prophetic guidance and direction in order to provide temples for members of the church throughout the world.
A new temple will be built in each of the following locations.
We can't take 5 or 10 years to build a temple now and keep up with President Nelson.
The temple program is exquisite. It's sacred. It's not something that you just casually go about. We developed a flat platform, and when we assembled the units, we knew within a width of the laser whether it was plumb or not.
The temple has 25 unique modules that all piece together perfectly to align so that we can take this temple anywhere in the world.
What you'll notice when you enter the temple is a simplistic beauty. It certainly is beautiful, and the workmanship is wonderful. But what you'll feel is a spirit of peace.
It's beautiful and it's amazing, and it is truly a house of God.
It's just going to be a continued blessing for members of the church around the world.
And with the help of an ingenious construction design company in Alabama, the church has found a way to keep up with the demands of new temple projects by building modular temples. A company called Blocks, based in Bessemer, Alabama, has helped the church pilot a revolutionary modular construction method to enable a lightning-fast build time for new temples. So the modular temple conception was developed so that the church could take any temple anywhere in the world. The Helena, Montana temple structure was assembled on site in just 2 weeks. Now, the Helena, Montana temple is a 10,000 square foot, 96-foot high temple created from 25 prefabricated pieces, all manufactured in Alabama, which were then shrink wrapped and shipped to the temple site in Montana. The modular walls and floors were then assembled on site, and electrical, plumbing, heating, cooling, and ventilation systems, including the Art Deco stone cladding and towers, were then added afterwards.
Like other temples, its architecture is majestic, its finishes refined and beautiful. But the Helena, Montana temple has a unique distinction too. As the first temple of its kind, to use a revolutionary building process that promises more efficiency, less construction time, and a positive conservation impact. Enter Blocks, a new technology, design, engineering, and construction company. The challenge? To shorten construction timelines while maintaining temple quality.
The temple program is exquisite. It's sacred. It's not something that you just casually go about.
Blocks is working with the church on a pilot program for select temples, a process referred to as DMI, short for design, manufacture, and install. DMI is the process of manufacturing temple modules in an off-site facility and then shipping them to an announced temple site for installation.
Change from a stick-built process where you recreate projects every single time, where you can really start to scale and leverage supply chain and other resources.
Early on, Blocks management familiarized themselves with the specifics of temple construction.
And so this is showing the celestial room is actually one.
The first part of that was trying to understand what it really meant to do a temple, which took us years.
It's important to understand what matters. And it means a lot to understand what happens in these rooms.
Chris Chitana and his team visited temples in Mesa, Arizona, and Memphis, Tennessee.
I came back and I said, we need to be more precise.
You don't quite understand it until you see a level of care that's gone into building a temple.
The completed modular components are shrink wrapped and shipped to the temple site.
It's a remarkable thing to see the hand of the Lord in all of this. Because of progress in technology and construction methods, it's now possible to do what is being done.
I came here in 2 weeks and we have a structure. The ceiling, the wall, the electrical, all put together. I feel like it's something that can change the way we build temples around the world.
As a Latter-day Saint, logistics manager Zach Hart is grateful for the opportunity to be part of such a meaningful project.
When I told my family what I was going to do in my new job, it was a tearful moment that we'll be able to bring temples to many more people in a much faster time period than standard construction. This is what it's all about for us.
What we're really looking at is trying to bring temples more to the members of the church.
In many cases, the DMI process will reduce the time to build a temple by more than half.
It's a changing game. You can build something like that with that high quality, and that will open to bring that all over the world.
It's the blessings that come from being able to participate in sacred ordinances. The more we can bring a temple to the people, the more they will attend.
I feel these things will bless the life of the people.
A new process that preserves the long-established quality and regal beauty found inside and out of sacred houses of the Lord, like the Helena, Montana Temple.
Gentlemen, I am inspired.
From a business perspective, using the modular approach has many advantages. Modules are constructed in a controlled environment, and then they're shipped to the location, and then specialized crews are brought in to assemble the already built temples by connecting the modules. This saves on-site construction time, makes it unnecessary to recruit local construction crews, allows much shorter times between temple announcement and temple completion, and allows construction to proceed independent of the weather, among other things. The mass production of sacred edifices allows for construction of many buildings at the same time. Workers at the blocks factory are employed full-time on such projects and wouldn't necessarily need to wait for LDS Church announcements of new temples to continue working. With a limited number of floor plans, temples could be mass-produced year-round, with the final destination determined by the inspiration of church leaders. This process is similar to how the automobile industry operates. In the auto industry, cars are often manufactured on assembly lines before any specific buyer is identified. Because the same makes and models of cars are largely interchangeable, their final destination can easily be adjusted as needed. The Montana Temple isn't the only prefabricated house of the Lord that the church has announced. The modules for the Cody, Wyoming Temple have already been delivered to the construction site. This occurred even before Cody officially approved the project, which has only been approved under the threat of church-funded lawsuits that could bankrupt the city. That temple still doesn't have the final go-ahead, but those prefabricated pieces are sitting there on site. This suggests that the construction of the modules for the Cody, Wyoming Temple began long before the approval for the temple was sought by the LDS Church. Now, the cost of each one of these huge buildings is likely between $7 million and $100 million, depending on the size. The Widow's Mite Report, which is a church watchdog, has confirmed through a number of sources that the average cost of a Mormon temple is around $1,100 per square foot. But what does all of this have to do with the Fairview Temple?
Get to the point.
Given the high cost of building temples, the potential cost of litigation in Fairview is actually minimal, especially since the municipality would bear all expenses if it loses the case. For the LDS Church, this represents a low-risk strategy for placing these massive worship centers wherever it wants. And now here's the big tie-in. I postulate that the Fairview Temple might already be built in modular form, shrink-wrapped and waiting to be shipped to Fairview, Texas.
Where's your proof? Where's the evidence?
The prefab temple hasn't been shipped because the church learned its lessons in Cody, Wyoming. Shipping the temple parts to a site prior to final approval is a bad look. And think back to when the Fairview City Council rejected the church's initial plans for the temple in the town because the proposed structure failed to meet zoning codes because it was too large. What did the church do? Well, the church only offered to change the temple's name and reduce the height of the spire by a mere 15 feet. But so many have asked why the church didn't offer larger concessions. And here's the entire point of this video. I believe it's because the Fairview Temple is already constructed off-site, so there's no other possible concessions that the church could make.
That makes sense.
The church isn't proposing to build a temple in Fairview. It wants to assemble a temple in Fairview, and that's because that temple has already been constructed. If I'm right, then the church has already spent many millions of dollars on the modules for this esoteric castle. The Fairview Temple is 44,000 square feet, so its cost is likely in the $45 to $50 million range.
I mean, that's a lot of money.
With no other houses of the Lord announced for a building of this slightly unique size, the church can't change the temple size. Hence, the only option for the church is to proceed with litigation.
I don't understand. I am never going to understand.
The church has very little to lose by suing the town of Fairview. The church doesn't want to lose its $50 million investment that it has already made. And it certainly doesn't want to be embarrassed by some small podunk town.
I'm leaving this podunk town!
A town for which the church has so little regard that the temple wasn't even initially named for the town where it's proposed to be built.
Wrap it up!
It's wrong to criticize leaders of the church.
In summary, the church's dedication to this project is unmistakable. They have made a significant investment and are strongly motivated to overcome legal and local obstacles. The Fairview Temple stands as a testament to the church's relentless determination and boldness in attempting to expand its global reach despite facing substantial local opposition. Now, thanks so much for watching this deep dive into the Fairview Temple saga. What do you think of my prefabricated hypothesis? Let me know in the comments. And if you found this episode insightful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you will never miss an update. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think the church will win its lawsuit, or is there another twist in its ongoing story? Always think celestial, and remember, no unhallowed hand can stop this podcast from progressing.
Hello, Temple!
That's right up there with, so you can sneak porn stars into the Salt Lake City Temple to film illicit scenes of an inappropriate nature in somebody else's religious building.
What the hell is this?
The world domination theory of Jews or whatever.
I think that's a really interesting theory there. One that I had never thought of before. The church is using these modular structures now, and I used to work for a company that actually, I'm not sure if it was the same company, but it was in Georgia, and they made modular medical clinics. It's a pretty amazing technology. They can put these things up just in a matter of days or weeks once the foundation work is finished. And it came with everything, including the toilet paper on the toilet paper rolls. So it would be amazing if they could do that in one that large. What I question is, could they do the modular piece on a temple as large as Fairview? I don't know. It's an interesting theory.
Probably not. It's just a conspiracy, and it's kind of a conspiracy theory, so I don't really have a lot of grounding in it. I guess you could say that it is definitely on the fake news spectrum, but I do find it interesting that it might explain everything as to why the church can't modify anything in Fairview. It's because it's already prefabricated and it's already ready to go. Hence, there's no compromises that could potentially be made that would explain it. I do understand that this is a fringe theory and probably not 100% accurate, but it is speculative. Let us know down in the comment section what you think about that. Leave us a 5-star review if you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts. Give us a thumbs up too. We'd appreciate that. You can find the Mormon News Roundup. We're on Instagram and we're also on TikTok. Let us know your thoughts on this. Tim Ballard is back in the news here, and for all of the wrong reasons. The disgraced OUR rescuer who allegedly rescued children. He bilked a lot of Mormons out of a lot of money and apparently didn't rescue anyone. That's the allegation. He's had a lot of criminal charges of sexual abuse against him. It's absolutely crazy here. But this is what Tim Ballard here, who's a very famous ex-Mormon, because he was excommunicated from the church for his somewhat confirmed crap here. Tim Ballard is weighing in on Kamala Harris. Let's hear what Timmy has to say about the Democratic presumptive nominee.
But Biden doesn't care. He doesn't get it. Kamala is a total yeah, you can put that in the notes. You got to understand, Kamala Harris actually said once in a tweet that we don't need the wall because most of the seizures of drugs and trafficking happen at ports of entry. So we don't need a wall. Like, consider this. There is no port of entry without a wall. That's the whole point. But Kamala Harris can't understand that 2 + 2 = 4. So do your best to type that up into notes and send that to Fox and Friends, because I want to Kamala Harris.
The most amazing thing is here, even though he's been excommunicated from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, the conservative, especially the male conservatives out there, they still really want to defend Tim Ballard for some reason, even though he engages in this reprehensible conduct and absolutely atrocious verbiage. Man, why do people want to prop this guy up? I don't understand it.
Neither do I. White trash, as far as I'm concerned.
And that's coming from somebody who lives in Tennessee. So you know what you're talking about?
Yeah, I do.
It's going to get me in trouble. We got a couple last news articles to take us out of here. The first one here is from Generally Unquotable, one of my favorite news programs out there. Megan does a fantastic job here. And I want to play this for you because it's very shocking, the allegations that she's saying about the mistreatment of currently serving LDS missionaries in the Philadelphia area. This story here really tugs at my heartstrings because missionaries are one of the church's most prized possessions. And we should be taking care of the missionaries. And it appears in this particular case that the church is not taking care of the missionaries, and there's no excuse for that. So let's hear what she has to say about the missionaries who are currently living in the Philadelphia area and the deplorable conditions under which they're supposedly living.
This is my apartment in the Philadelphia, Pennsylvania Mission Hatboro area. Rubber hoses hooked to a spaghetti strainer and with rubber stoppers for the hot and cold faucets for a shower. It drained into the concrete floor drain in front of the toilet. Shower curtains separated the bathroom from the living room bedroom. Living area had old moldy carpet, paneling that was water stained. Some walls had just studs. Couple of incandescent bulbs for light. No windows, no heater, AC, or ventilation. Opened the door to the street for airflow. Kitchen was a hot plate, toaster oven, and decrepit fridge, and the bathroom sink. Cockroaches galore. One bed on the floor, clothing hung from ceiling pipes. At least the pot shop, aka guitar store next door, made it bearable, and on P-Day we could hang out and play the guitars while the proprietor got high. It was winter, so without heat we wore our coats in the apartment, and my parents made sure I had ankle to wrist one-piece holy garments. Button up from crotch to neck, buttons flap on the back, so I was warm, although I washed them with a red shirt and they turned pink, LOL. The Church of Cheese and Rice and Rattly Snakes made sure my mission was a pleasant and uplifting experience. Nothing better than lying about heaven while living in hell. Well, at least we never wanted to be in our apartment any longer than we had to. The mission president, President Payne, told me it was a character building experience. Ultimately, the apartment was condemned and padlocked while we were out tracting in a snowstorm. It was kind of a terrible day to come home in wet clothing and soaked shoes to see that the unit had a padlock on the door, a condemnation notice taped to the front, all our stuff locked inside, and all we had were our bicycles, a couple of books of Mormons, and wet clothes. Used the payphone at the corner store to call the district leader to see if we could ride our bikes some 10 miles to their place to stay until we could get a new apartment. Yeah, missionary life was special. And yes, we were told to not write home to our families about our living arrangements. We could only tell them the uplifting parts. Wasn't much to say when we wrote home, so the letters were short. Preaching about heaven while living in hell didn't work well. Only other area in the Philly mission that may have been this bad was Kensington, the drug capital of Philly. Camden wasn't even this bad. When I was stationed in Philly, we had a list of safe houses, mostly non-members who liked the missionaries, in case we needed to find a place quickly. A couple of guys in our district were beaten up badly in a laundromat, so we had to wash clothes in a large group every P-Day. The beaten up elders were hospitalized, but the mission didn't seem to care. They told us to just get out there and find all those white folks that need to hear the gospel.
If that account is true, and I really hope that it isn't, that's absolutely irresponsible to have missionaries, especially in the United States, living those type of conditions. That is absolutely shocking.
I agree. I never had an apartment that nasty. That was just totally shocking. And it was condemned. I mean, good heavens.
We've heard a lot of missionaries, especially in developing countries that live in extremely austere conditions. It can be very, very trying. But especially in the United States, that's a big surprise. And the church is a multi-billion-dollar corporation that is worth almost $300 billion. These missionaries who are paying for their own missionary service between $400 and $500 a month, they deserve to live in conditions that are much better than that, not in condemned homes. The idea that also that you're not supposed to tell your family about anything that's bad that's happening with your mission, that's absolutely terrible. I call on the church or anyone else who is hearing this to do better in securing missionaries the proper housing that they need. They shouldn't be living in these type of conditions. We should be taking care of our missionary force. I'm really disappointed to hear about these type of stories.
Absolutely. Yeah, that was totally shocking and unconscionable.
Yeah, the church needs to do a lot better. One of our last articles here, and you brought this to my attention, Doug, and maybe you can walk us through here, is the new gospel topics and questions section. What's going on here?
The church has a new section. This is also in the Gospel Library app, but it's called Topics and Questions. And it's kind of a soft landing spot. Rather than taking you directly to the gospel topics essays, it takes you to a soft landing spot. It talks about helping others with questions, trusting in the Lord, assisting other people through their faith journey, etc., etc. So the interesting thing is down at the bottom, it has several selected topics, one of which is the origins of the Book of Abraham. That one really got my goat because they really just throw out a bunch of the failed theories that apologists have thrown out about the Book of Abraham. Sum it up by saying nobody can determine the truth of the Book of Abraham by a scholarly means. It's all spiritual. So, they really kind of took a step backwards. The original gospel topics essays are linked in some of these areas, and they're still in there, but you have to search for them. Now they're kind of just spread through the whole topics section from Adam all the way down to Zarahemla, I guess. They're still there, but they're just harder to find. I think the church is trying to cushion people a little bit and prep them so that they just don't run across something that's controversial to them.
The gospel topics essays were already somewhat hard to find. They aren't on the main page, and when you search for them, they don't easily come up. They're trying to make it even harder for people to find these somewhat unflattering essays in which the church admits that there are no good answers to many of the questions that we have, especially regarding the book of Abraham, especially with regarding to a number of other polygamy issues and church history issues. They're trying to make that harder to find. The church always wants to control the narrative and keep information that might affect someone's testimony out of their potential to be able to see that type of stuff. There's also another aspect of this too that you brought to my attention, and that was this letter here. There's an update here that was just released here on August 15th. Can you just sum up the update here that happened, Doug?
So that was sent out to evidently stakes and missions and things like that, talking about this new section. The thing that really kind of shook me when I saw this was that first bullet point: provides faithful responses to commonly asked questions. That right there is a red flag, because I'm not looking for faithful responses. That means apologetic responses to me. I'm looking for truthful responses. They didn't say that here. Big red flag.
In fact, it says gives guiding principles to assist those seeking answers and helping others who have questions. So once again, we're seeing the church trying to spin the narrative that there's no issues behind any of the really the reasons that a lot of people question the church's truth claims. They're trying to spin the narrative, which is always what they do. And you also brought this also to my attention here, Doug, that there is a new section here on church finances and commercial businesses. What's up with that?
Not much, really. Unfortunately, they talk about some of the businesses they had that were basically based off of pioneer industries that they had to have to survive in the old days. There is nothing in here about Ensign Peak. Absolutely nothing.
So we have church finances and commercial businesses that does not mention Deseret Management Corporation, which is the church's umbrella company for all of its commercial businesses are rolled up under Deseret Management Company. This essay, which is supposed to give you an introduction, doesn't mention that. It doesn't mention the church's financial investment arm, which is Ensign Peak Advisors. This essay is completely and utterly worthless to anyone who wants to actually learn about church finances and commercial businesses. Once again, the Gospel Topics essays are not about bringing the further light and knowledge the Father promised to send. Instead, it's about spinning narratives and providing a faith-promoting story. And I have a serious problem with that.
I do too.
We'll link to all this in the show notes for all those out there who want to review these things. And that does take us to our final segment here, Doug, which is the Mormon News Roundup poll of the week. And what is the poll this week?
What's the best fake news headline of the week?
And we release new episodes of the Mormon News Roundup every Sunday night at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we also release new episodes of the Mormon Movie Reviews every Monday night at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you come on over to the live chat, you can interact with your humble hosts at that time. So I've got a couple of fake headlines here that the Whitecat prophecy brought out for us. And I want you to read those to us and be the first person to take our poll. So what is the fake news headline number one?
Presidency of world's oldest women's organization released by male superior.
They're referencing the Relief Society in which the callings come and go by a male superior. So much for, like J. Annette Dennis said, women in the church having more power and authority than any other organization in the world, right?
Exactly.
Okay, that's fake headline number one. Or how about number two?
Unhallowed hand kind of stopping work from progressing, new report says.
Yes, far from no unhallowed hands will stop this work from progressing, which is what Joseph Smith said. It appears that unhallowed hands are kind of gumming things up, don't you think?
Yeah, I think this was about Mormon shrink.
Yeah, the Mormon shrinkage is real. Or how about number three?
Gandhi rejects temple work.
Breaking news. But if he rejects it, we'll just do it a couple of times until it sticks. I understand that most people get it done several times just to be on the safe side.
Exactly.
Yeah. Or how about number four?
Celestial Kingdom Welcoming Committee excited to try new genital melter.
I actually showed this poll to my wife. She didn't get the joke here. For those of you not in the know, what's the joke behind this? Is kind of a weird one. What's the joke here, Doug?
The joke is that I think it was Boyd K. Packer or Bruce R. McGunky said that if you go to the Celestial Kingdom, you won't have genitals anymore. And they call it the TK smoothie.
Right. It was Joseph Fielding Smith really was the first person who kind of postulated this. It was picked up by Bruce R. McGunky, but then it was echoed by President Nelson in his famous Think Celestial talk. So it is definitely still around. If you only get to the Celestial Kingdom, you won't have genitals in the afterlife. And that's why we have the genital melter. That's your fake news headline number four. How about number five?
This seems normal. Mormon teen thinks as entire family now chanting around altar. Okay. Little temple reference there.
Yep, you got it. Or how about number six?
TK Smoothie, top search porn category in Celestial Kingdom, reveals Pornhub.
And again, my wife didn't get this joke either. This is Ken, remember, from the Barbie movie, and he jokes around that he doesn't have a penis and she doesn't have a vagina. And that's literally the TK smoothie there in embodiment, in perfect form there. Ryan Gosling, who is an ex-member of the church, by the way. He is an ex-Mormon. Or how about number 7?
LDS Church announces plans for 11 new feuds with small town zoning boards.
That's inspiring. The more lawsuits that the church files, the bigger my testimony. Do you agree, Doug?
I agree. I think they should just start having mud wrestling. Whoever wins gets the temple. Yeah, or not.
I'll place my money on Brad Wilcox in the mud wrestling. I think he would be pretty good at it. I don't know that for a certainty. That's just my guess. Or how about number 8, which is your final selection?
Breaking: LDS Church acquires the largest competitor. Oh, that's great.
Now, they still need to get through the SEC regulators to approve that merger, but we definitely think that it's going to happen.
They have to take that spire off. It's not nearly tall enough.
Very nice. Now, here's your 8 selections here. If you can be the first person to take our poll, I'd appreciate it. Those of you out in the live chat, go ahead and cast your votes at this time. Do you like Presidency of World's Oldest Women's Organization, released by Male Superior? Do you like the Unhallowed Hand one, or Gandhi? Or number 4, the Genital Melter? Number 5, the Chanting Around the Altar?
I'm going with 4. That's just too hysterical.
Okay. Very nice. I appreciate that. Those of you out in the live chat, appreciate you casting your votes. I really appreciate that. That means a lot. That does take us to our absolute final segment here, Doug, which is the Mormon News Roundup Joke of the Week. And I believe that you have that for us.
What happens when you cross a Mormon with a Unitarian Universalist?
I'm not sure about that one.
You get someone who knocks on your door for no particular reason.
Very nice. That's good. I appreciate that. As far as the things that I'm working on, tomorrow night, we are doing the Mormon movie reviews, Out of Liberty. This is a reference to when Joseph Smith was arrested in, I believe it was October or November 1838, for the crimes associated with the Mormon War in Missouri. He was held until the spring of 1839, at which point he was basically allowed to escape. And the trials and machinations that went on during that time frame, this is Out of Liberty, meaning Liberty Jail, where Joseph Smith, Hiram Smith, Francis Lyman, and a couple of others were holed up in that facility, and then they were allowed to escape. It is a good movie. We're going to be doing a movie review of that tomorrow night. You ever watched Out of Liberty there, Doug?
I have not. I'll have to look at that.
Yeah, it's a very interesting movie. I think you'd appreciate it. But if you don't want to watch the entire thing, tune into our Mormon movie reviews. We'll do the review in about 6 minutes, and you'll get everything that you need to know about it. And the final thing that I am working on here is an episode that is going to be released this Thursday called Conquering My Shadows. What's your thoughts about it?
I don't want to give too much away. It's been codified. That's all I've got to say.
Yeah, I finally take a crack here at Ward Radio and Cardin Ellis. It's really been months in the making. Honestly, this video took me way too long to actually respond to all of the things that were said about me. I was compared to Adolf Hitler. I was compared to Hamas terrorists. I was compared to neo-Nazis. I was compared to QAnon conspiracy theorists who postulate the Jews are behind an international banking conspiracy. I was compared to bugs that need to be squished and exterminated. This was a really reprehensible episode that I was really run through the mud on. And I finally really, I don't know if you want to call me patriarchal, but I finally just manned up and I put together a monster review in which I finally, in my opinion, conquer my shadows. This is a must-see Thursday night, 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, not to be missed. What do you think, Doug?
Yeah, I think it's a thumbs up. 2 thumbs up. 2 of them. Where are they? There.
I appreciate that, Doug. Thanks so much for coming on the Mormon News Roundup. It's been a pleasure hosting you.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
Absolutely. Now, for those of you out there, if you can hit the like and the subscription, I'd really appreciate that. I want to give a shout out to Weird Alma on bandcamp.com for this episode's music. I'd like to thank our Patreon supporters and our membership supporters at YouTube. That means the world. I really appreciate that. Those of you out there, if you enjoy this content, if you can make a donation, I'd really appreciate that. Don't forget to think celestial, and remember,
no unhallowed hand can stop this podcast from progressing.
When it comes to nicknames of the church, such as LDS Church, the Mormon Church, to remove the Lord's name from the Lord's church is a major victory for Satan.
Satan.
Well, I want to thank Doug. This is the after show. If you want to call into the after show, then the link is in the bottom. Hopefully talk about something Mormon news related. That was a great episode. I want to thank Doug so much for coming on. Really appreciate it, my friend. I want to thank those people in the live chat one more time. Doug, I'm going to have you on every week, my friend, for your donation. Really appreciate that. That goes a long way. I want to thank Theodis once again. Sir, thank you very much. That is very kind of you. I really appreciate that. And Aroused member, thanks so much for coming on. Thanks everybody for watching the show. I do have a little... For those of you, since you're still here, You can't get enough of the Mormon News Roundup, and I appreciate that. That means a lot to me. I really appreciate that. I'm going to give you a little sneak peek here because this Thursday episode is absolutely going to be lit. It is really going to be something. And I'm going to show you just a little bit of what we're going to see here from on Thursday. So let me see if I can cue this up for you. I apologize. I've got to don't normally have this kind of technical difficulties, but I will do so right now. Hold on. Share screen. Here we go. This is the episode that we're talking about here. It's called Conquering My Shadows. And I really take a good crack here at Cardin for the first time. This is a not to be missed episode. This is Thursday night, 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'm telling you, this is, I can't do any better than this. This is the biggest episode that I've ever released. This took me so long to put together. It is an hour, you can see, an hour and 10 minutes long. And I really conquer my shadows on this one. I'm going to give everyone here, since I don't see anybody in the green room here. I'm going to give you a little sneak peek. Just watch the first couple of minutes of this one to whet your appetites. But believe me, this one is going to be worth it. Let's take a look and see what you think. I want to get some feedback along the way. I just had the pleasure of coming across a Mormon channel called Faith in Focus. It's been around for about a year and it currently has 3,000 subscribers. The mission of the channel is to help others develop a stronger relationship and faith in Jesus Christ. The channel is hosted by Latter-day Saint Nick Sales. Oh, and I'm D-Days, the host of the Mormon News Roundup and the Mormon Movie Reviews, and that's talent on loan from Kolob. On Faith in Focus, a video entitled Defending the LDS Church with Cardin Ellis from Word Radio caught my eye. Word Radio is the creation of Brother Ellis, a radio host at FM 98.1 and an independent filmmaker in Los Angeles. What follows is an extended breakdown of that video, a response to a clip that Word Radio put on their channel about me, and a brief interview with Cardin at the end of the video where I tried to bury the hatchet with him. Let's dive right in.
Ladies and gentlemen, kicking off the first stop on his world tour, our new president and prophet, Russell M. Nelson! You say you want some revelation, well, here you go. It's gonna blow your freaking mind.
Kid you not, I would say when I first started watching your videos, I probably binge watched 30 episodes of Midnight Mormons in like 6 days.
Nick binge watched 30 episodes of Word Radio?
They're binge watching it. You're binge watching it, right?
Oh my gosh, Nick, seriously, are you okay, buddy? Because I hear that episodes of Midnight Mormons is what they use to torture Guantanamo detainees. But the International Criminal Court in The Hague outlawed it as cruel and unusual punishment.
This could constitute cruel and unusual punishment.
In this next clip, Cardin talks about what happens if someone leaves the Mormon church. He can't be friends with them anymore.
I had a bad experience with a friend that went super woke super fast and left the church. You know, this is a guy that served missions. You've been in the church for a long time. Male relationships are kind of like a brotherhood. And when you have a brother in Christ or a brother in the church, it jars you more losing that kind of friendship.
We can't be friends.
It appears that brotherhood is paper thin. And this tells you everything you need to know about Cardin. There's no reason for losing a friendship if someone leaves the church, but for him, he literally can't be friends with someone who doesn't drink the Kool-Aid like him, or someone who thinks that it's morally repugnant to sleep with underage girls, or someone who thinks it's abjectly wrong to fraudulently and shamefully hoard $300 billion. The brotherhood's going to end if you have a problem with the church.
Wait, are we not friends?
Next up, we get to hear about Cardin's talents.
You know, one of my few talents is I'm an independent media producer.
And he's also a part-time exterminator. You know, his crazy pest control live streams are off the hook, y'all.
You want to be able to take pictures like this catching rats in your house? Just watch and learn.
You know what I'm saying?
Next up, the board radio host is going to tell us about his successful multimedia empire.
And I started a podcast. First was going to be a debunking of the CES letter. That morphed into teaming up with Kwaku and Brad doing This Is the Show. It's been successful.
It's been successful? This Is the Show was yanked off the internet and practically shoved down the memory hole.
Not great.
Next up, Cardin has some inspired advice for ex-Mormons.
I don't care if you don't like the church. I don't care. I don't care if you no longer want to be a member of the church, but just don't lie about what it is or make yourself a noble warrior for doing cruel things to your family members that still believe.
Ex-Mormons do cruel things to family members who still believe? What you mean, like cruel things like what the church has done to those family members, like horrible messages of homophobia, racism, sexism, anti-trans rhetoric, investment frauds? You mean like those kind of things?
This is stupid, and we just kind of need to move on.
Cardin claims he doesn't care if people don't believe in the church. He has a strange way of showing it. Cardin is really making the bad argument here that there's never a rational justification for anyone to ever criticize LDS church policies, doctrines, or actions. It's an attempt at a thought-stopping technique. Next up, our fearless host, Nick, is going to agree with Cardin that there is no such thing as righteous opposition to the church.
Because I have family members and friends who have left the church as well, and I can't speak for them. I don't know their exact experience, but I do know that for a lot of people, when they leave the church, I feel like they are grown up in the church where they're very comfortable with what they're taught. And then they maybe come across something online that either is true or false, or it is exaggerated, it's a straw man argument, and that shakes their testimony a little bit. But I feel like for a lot of people, they kind of just stop there. They kind of just say, this is what I was taught, this is the rebuttal, and now I guess I'm going to leave.
It's amusing that Nick was about to say that he knows a lot of family members and friends who have left the church, but he caught himself.
Because I have family members and friends who have left the church as well, and because I have family.
Yeah, after watching your podcast, I'll bet you do, Nick. Notice that our fearless host here has set things up to reiterate the old trope that people who leave the church are lazy learners and lax disciples. They don't think things through. They're very shallow, and they don't consider all sides of the argument. For Nick, there's absolutely no good reasons for people to ever leave the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
If you choose to become inactive or to leave the restored Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, where will you go? What will you do?
Whatever I feel like I want to do. Gosh!
I love that clip so much, Coach. That is very, very good. And I have over an hour more of this. This video is absolutely epic. It is going to get much better when we watch it. Trust me, you want to come back on Thursday night. I really appreciate that. I want to thank all of you out there in the live chat. I don't see anybody who's coming on here. But I really appreciate it. Thanks so much for joining the Mormon News Roundup. Join us for the Mormon movie reviews on Monday night tomorrow. And then be sure to tune in on Thursday night. This is going to be an episode that you will not forget. Oh, well, real quick, we do have one person who's came on to rescue me here. Big Chris, what do you think of this episode here tonight?
Oh, let me turn off that.
Yeah, I hear you. What do you think about the episode? What do you think about our episode tonight?
That was a good one, man. I always get a chuckle out of reminiscing about the old trips to the temple and missionary stuff.
Yeah, those missionaries, that was shocking to see the conditions that they were living in. I mean, this isn't in Philadelphia. I mean, this isn't in some developing country in Africa.
Yeah, I don't know. Especially these millennials, right? They need they're not used to that. But anyway, yeah.
They're definitely not used to it. I mean, today's missionaries are encountering, especially in North America, a high degree of people who are secular, people who don't want to change their religion. The church is floundering in North America. I mean, it only grew a couple of tens of thousands of people in the last couple of years. So you continually beating your head against the wall and people are not joining the church. You're spending a great deal of time and then you're doing it in very austere conditions. And especially when you combine that with, like you said, the millennial generation. I mean, they don't have the work ethic, let's just be honest here, of the boomer generation. They're used to, I've got kids that are in this generation. They're used to having things just a little bit easier. When you get out there and realize how difficult it is to pound doors for 100 hours a week, it's very daunting.
Yeah, but I think, it's been spoken before that missions are probably more for the missionary, rather than the people that are serving. Because, once you've put in those 2 years, I don't know, it takes a lot to just leave it alone right away. But I've seen some folks do that too.
Yeah, I mean, what John Dehlin said recently is that up to a third of missionaries, this is the allegation, a third of missionaries are leaving the church within 9 months of coming home from their missions. That is absolutely astounding. And we're also hearing that a high number of missionaries are going home early for a number of different reasons, everything from apostasy to just quitting to so-called mental health issues. Now, there's a lot of legitimate mental health conditions out there for missionaries, but there's also people who just want to come home and cite mental health, but it's actually not the core issue. The core issue is they've either lost their testimony or they don't want to be there. And remember, when I was a missionary back in the 90s, that was unthinkable. I mean, I'm telling you that there was only 1 or 2 missionaries that I was acquainted with who got sent home from the mission for almost any reason. You had to do something really remarkable. Generally, everybody who I was associated with in my mission, they finished pretty strong. They had good testimonies. They were hard workers and they were trying to do their best. We've seen a big change in how the church is approaching missionary work.
What did you say that people, how many more kids are coming home, you say?
Yeah, I mean, I talked to a lot of returned missionaries recently. A lot of them are coming home early off the mission. The anecdotal evidence here is that a high percentage, or up to maybe a third of missionaries, do not complete their Mormon missions all the way through. And in your time, Chris, when you were a missionary, what percent do you think came home for any reason whatsoever? What was it?
I knew of one sister who actually got pregnant. That was crazy. And then funny story, when me and like 3 other guys were heading home from where were we? Santa Cruz, Bolivia. Anyway, we're getting on that big plane home, and there was another guy there, and we didn't know who the hell he was, and we were like picking his brain. We're like, because there was 2 missions. And we're like, oh, you're from, so he said he was from the other mission, but we all started at the same time. So we were just doing the math, and he just kind of sat, like 30 feet away from us at the airport. It was hilarious because we all just kind of realized, oh man, he's going home early. We didn't care. We were done. So, but I just thought that was kind of funny. We didn't really dig in, but yeah, you're right. Nobody went home.
Yeah, and this is what Culture even tweeted this out. We all went in missions around the same time frame back in the 90s. That was really the golden age of Mormonism and really the heyday. And in my opinion, it's all been downhill since that time. But as Culture said, I didn't know any elders that got sent home for my mission, and we had about 200 elders. I had 225 missionaries who were in my mission. And I think I knew 1 or 2 people who got sent home early. One sister missionary lost her testimony. Another person had a family emergency, but it was incredibly rare. We're seeing anecdotal information because the church does not release how many missionaries come home early for different reasons, including missionaries that come home, unfortunately, due to either serious illness or even death. We have to track that, through different means, but approximately 1 missionary dies every single month in the service of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Typically, these happen for various different reasons, from illnesses, from bike accidents to car accidents and things like that. Yeah, the church is not at all transparent, but the living conditions that we saw from Megan that she brought out, those are abhorrent. And I just remember my own mission, Chris. I remember being a missionary, and there was one time that I was in an apartment that was set for 2 elders, but we had an odd number of missionaries in the mission field, and I was the odd man out. And so I didn't have a bed to sleep on. I literally had to sleep on the floor. I was getting bit by spiders. I still have scars on my hand from the spiders that were biting me. Even back then, still bad living conditions. And somebody put into the chat here that, a lot of times the missionaries will stay with church members as part of their missions. And those church members, my understanding is that they are compensated at least in some way for housing the missionaries, and then to make them live in those deplorable conditions. That's absolutely atrocious, considering the fact, number 1, the missionaries paid for it themselves. Number 2, the church is worth $300 billion. There's just no excuse for this.
Yeah. I've got all the stories. I mean, I remember staying at this one place that had, and we were, you're not supposed to live in a place with single sisters, single women, single mothers. And it was kind of like you said, somebody, months or years before me did a solid to this family who was, down on their luck or something. And now they're not only housing missionaries, but they're also feeding them at night. And it was just a crappy place. And I remember there was at least 3 single sisters, and I was just looking around like, this doesn't smell right. But I was also going to say, touching on living conditions, I was about a year out, and we had the showers that would electrify the water. And so if you go to monkey with the temperature, you're 50-50 going to get zapped. But it wasn't the real bad ones were like they had these natural gas heater ones that I never really, but those were up in like the Andes. And I remember like a year out, there was a guy who was from where I was serving, but he was on the other side of the country. And then he came back in a body bag because he didn't smell the natural gas and he just died in the shower. That was probably the worst homesick I got. I was like, oh man, I don't know if I'm going to even make it, because that was rough. But anyway.
Yeah, I mean that is absolutely rough, and we've seen, unfortunately, a number of times when the church has put its own parishioners in danger. I want to play this clip, which was one of my most viral clips of all time, which was a situation that happened last year in Utah, where the church did not take care of its own parishioners. This is called the silent. I made this video here. I want to play it, get your reaction. This is the great thing about the fact that I've been doing this program for so long, is that I have literally 1,000 videos to cover almost any topic. But this is called the silent killer: carbon monoxide poisoning in LDS church in Utah, tragic accident or negligence. I'm going to play this clip. It happened last year, and we're going to see what the church does to take care of its own parishioners and its own missionaries. There's just been a lot of questions that have been brought up on the church's priorities. Let's play this. It's only a 3-minute clip. Get your reaction.
What happens when trust is broken? Imagine a place of worship, a sanctuary, suddenly turning into a danger zone. Now let's take you to Monroe, Utah, to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints meeting house. A seemingly regular day took a dangerous turn as dozens of people started feeling sick. The culprit? An unseen, silent assailant: carbon monoxide. In this place of faith and fellowship, a lethargic cloud of poison seeped in, undetected. People gathered in unity, sharing in worship, were unknowingly inhaling this invisible hazard. The true shock lies not in the incident itself, but in its location. This wasn't a factory or a mine, places usually associated with such hazards. Instead, it was a church, a sanctuary considered safe and sacred. In a place where the community comes to find peace, they found themselves in peril. The unexpected nature of the event left many stunned, and the sanctuary that was once a beacon of safety was now a breeding ground for fear. In a shocking turn of events, the sanctuary became a hazard, leaving many to question: how did this happen? In the aftermath of the gas leak, 54 people reported symptoms of poisoning, with 49 requiring medical treatment. A wave of distress swept through the congregation as the unseen hazard took its toll. Emergency services responded swiftly, treating the affected on-site and evacuating the building to prevent further exposure. The malaise was not a figment of collective imagination. It was real, tangible, and potentially fatal. The symptoms ranged from mild headaches and dizziness to more serious conditions, such as loss of consciousness and even potential brain damage. An alarming number of individuals, 22 to be exact, were in such critical condition that they had to be rushed to hospitals equipped with hyperbaric chambers. The chambers, typically used for treating deep-sea divers suffering from decompression sickness, were now serving a different purpose. They were the beacon of hope for those whose lives hung in the balance, battling the invisible enemy within their bodies. The incident served as a grim reminder of the dangers that lurk in the places we consider safest. It was a day of reckoning, a day that tested the resilience and unity of the community. The community was left in shock and disbelief as 22 people were rushed to hospitals with hyperbaric chambers.
I think you get the you basically get the idea here. I'm gonna just look. These type of accidents definitely can happen, but the issue here is that the church did not have carbon monoxide detectors in this chapel, and they don't in any of the chapels at this time, unless they were required to by law. And Utah in particular has antiquated laws, meaning that buildings that were more than, I don't know, they were built like 20 or 30 years ago, they weren't required to update it with the code and have carbon monoxide detectors. So the church didn't have any. And what happened? All of these people got sick because of the church's lack of safeguarding. And it's the same thing with the missionaries. And it's the same thing with the background checks of LDS leaders. Think about it. If the law doesn't require the church to do background checks on its leaders, then it won't. And we can't figure out who the sexual predators are in our congregation. So it seems like the church only does the bare minimum when it comes to taking care of the children in the congregations, of its own congregants who are worshiping, and the missionaries in the missionary field. I just wonder why the church's priorities are so askew.
Yeah, and I think a different view on that would be, like listening to Mormon stories and stuff, and you and I can talk about the good old days with road shows and Mutual, and I know they still do that, but I think that they're limiting a lot of activity in the church houses or in the meeting houses, and these big fancy kitchens with huge ovens and stuff that never get turned on. It's kind of like ashtrays on a airplane, you know what I mean? But I don't think that's a coincidence. I think the church is just. I remember even in like high school, our gym was under renovation, and I was trying to get brownie points with the coach, and I was like, "Hey, coach, why don't we have practice at my church?" And I just called the bishop just to make sure it was cool, and he was just like, "Oh, hell no, you have no idea what the liability issues are on that." So that's what it's all. But like you said, it's all about money. They're just looking out for themselves. So it's a mixture of less exposure, less meetings, and I don't know, less carbon monoxide filters. Or
look, Chris, I can't understand the church's priorities, because a carbon monoxide detector, I mean, how much does one of those cost, do you think?
$30 or something.
Maybe even less than that. One of the things that I do as part of my living is that I own a couple of rental properties, and I have carbon monoxide detectors in all of my properties, and fire extinguishers, and fire detectors as well, and mold sensors, and a number of different things in my properties. Why? Not because it's code, not because it's law, but because first of all, I want the people who live in my properties to have a good experience. Number two, I want to protect them. And number three, I want to protect my assets, my the properties that I spent money on. If you have a poisoning in a congregation, it opens up the church to lawsuits. That could be millions of dollars of people suing the church, of saying, you put me in a dangerous situation by not having carbon monoxide detectors. So why is the church not just spending a couple of dollars to upgrade its facilities in order to protect the people, that the sheep of the flock, the people here? Some of them had serious health repercussions. I don't understand the church's priorities in so many ways, and it's always just a great mystery as to why the church can't shell a few dollars out. Now, in fairness, after this happened, the church said that it was going to start making sure that carbon monoxide detectors were in all of its buildings. But look, I mean, this is what the church needs to do, is hire property managers who are taking care of the buildings. I understand that the Quorum of the 15 are a bunch of shriveled up white guys who are generally businessmen and lawyers and are not used to running real estate. I get that. Hire this out and fix the problem so that you have proper management at your facilities so that people are kept safe. But the church just refuses to do it unless it's literally brought to and required to by law. I don't understand.
Yeah, I think it'd be interesting to know. I'm sure they have regional regional building guys, maybe that cruise by the buildings every quarter or something, just to check up on them. Who knows? That might be an interesting story to see what those guys are up to. See what the checklist is on that one.
I'll just say one other thing about the way that the church manages its property, since I do know a thing or two about it, since I'm in property management. Look, also in my properties, I have what are called minute detectors, which detect the temperatures of the property. And it sends me a text message alert if the property gets above 90 degrees. That I know something is wrong if the property is that hot. Usually it's a fire or whatever else. I also have Ring cameras that are set up on sensors as well, that if there's motion that is detected at 2:30 in the morning, that's not typically normal, and I can get an alert. What the church has had a string of vandalism problems, especially in the Intermountain West, where you see these people go to chapel and bust into all of these properties and break all the stuff inside. Millions of dollars worth of damage. We've seen that happen time and time again. And there's no security at the chapel level either. We don't have sensors to detect the fires. We don't have Ring cameras. There's no security whatsoever that the church does. That there's not carbon monoxide detectors. I mean, the church is managing its properties in the same way that people managed their properties back in the 1970s. And it's 2024. We can protect our congregants easily with carbon monoxide detectors that are connected to Wi-Fi and will send me a message if the carbon monoxide gets up too high. Or the security. Look, what we need at church headquarters is somebody looking at the security cameras in the middle of the night, inside of the chapel, outside of the chapel. You can see these guys running up and down the hallways, and it sends the security person a message so you can protect your assets. You protect the members, you protect the assets. This is a minimal amount of money that the church could spend to protect all of us and all of its properties, and yet it does not do so. I cannot figure it out. Literally, they could hire me to do this job, and for a couple of $100,000, I could protect all of the congregations in all of North America much better than the church does now. I don't get it.
Well, they can do it. They do it for free. I remember, I think I was building something. I've done that. Drove by the church, at before midnight, or I don't remember what it was. And I think, did I even go in? And that's always kind of creepy because those buildings are haunted. So I was just kind of just in and out as quick as I could before I got attacked by something, by like Adolf Hitler or who? No, Gandhi, right? You know what I'm talking about.
Wait a minute. You put Gandhi and Adolf Hitler. Wait a minute.
You said Gandhi was pissed off about getting his temple.
Oh, right.
Yeah, come on, man.
Gandhi rejected his temple ordinances, right?
Yeah, him and Anne Frank and all those people are all bent out of shape. Hey, listen, not to switch gears, but do you think going back to soft swinging, that's a whole new concept? I'm wondering if that's what keeps their membership intact. Any thoughts on that?
I think it is incredibly rare. It is literally less than 1% of 1%. It's something that is in the headlines and something that is pretty rare, in my opinion.
I don't know. You're way out in DC, right? I've got a lot of family in Utah, and I don't know. I might ask around, see what they know, because I think there's more to it. But yeah, I mean, sure, it's probably pretty small, but I'm sure we'll find out about it on Hulu, right?
Yeah, we definitely will. I will say one thing here. Kulch said they count on members not suing them, and that is absolutely correct. I'll just tell one quick story about that. Is that when I was on a military deployment, I worked for the church part-time. I also worked at a number of different places. The United States Reemployment Act that was passed after World War II says that if you go on a military deployment, then you have to come back to your employer and they have to give you your job back. You can't be terminated for going on a deployment. Well, when I came back, Utah Valley University and BYU had terminated my employment, and I came back and talked to both of them. I ended up filing a complaint against UVU because they didn't hire me back right away, and the Department of Labor ended up giving me my job back. But I actually didn't do anything to BYU because it was the Lord's University, and I didn't get my job back again until about another year later in a different department. So yes, I filed the complaint against UVU, but I'm not going to file it against BYU because that's the Lord's University. So I just let that one go. So there's always a double standard that the church counts on for the members not doing anything in particular against them.
Yeah, tithing money, man, it's sacred.
Yeah, and you talked about Hitler here, and by the way, Chris, I do have a video on that too. I'm going to show you here because I've got a video for everything, man. It's absolutely crazy when you put together as many videos as I have. For those of you out, yeah, it's absolutely crazy. I need to get YouTube Premium though. Let's hear here. The actual name of this video is Hitler a Mormon? And this was obviously a very controversial video title here. And it's kind of, unless you're a Mormon, you don't really understand this video, because I'm not asking, was Adolf Hitler a Mormon? Because obviously he was not. He was a Roman Catholic. But the question is Adolf Hitler a Mormon? And really only a Latter-day Saint can understand what I'm getting at here. But let me play this one for you. It's only 2 minutes long. Get your thoughts on Adolf Hitler. My favorite people to do temple work for are Adolf Hitler and Vlad the Impaler. If you watch this show, you definitely know that. So let's play this.
Have you ever pondered the fate of notorious figures, such as Adolf Hitler, in the afterlife? A fascinating topic indeed, especially when examined through the lens of various religious beliefs. In the realm of Mormonism, a concept known as general salvation ensures that nearly all individuals, regardless of their earthly deeds, have a chance for heavenly glory. This includes figures as infamous as Adolf Hitler. Now let's delve deeper into this unique doctrine. On the 10th of December in 1993, Hitler underwent a process referred to as posthumous baptism.
And that's his actual temple recommend card right there. That's the actual indexing card of Adolf Hitler right there.
Endowment and sealing to his parents. This event took place in the London, England temple. But what exactly does this mean? Posthumous baptism, or baptism for the dead, is a ritual where living individuals are baptized in the place of deceased ones. This practice is based on the belief that baptism is a necessary step for salvation, and thus should be available to all, regardless of their state in life or death. Endowment, on the other hand, is a sacred ordinance that provides individuals with divine power and blessings from God. This ritual involves a series of symbolic instructions, covenants, and promises that are believed to guide individuals towards eternal life. Sealing, the final step, refers to the eternal binding of individuals or families. In Hitler's case, he was sealed to his parents, signifying an eternal family bond that extends beyond mortal life.
Yeah, so Adolf Hitler was baptized and endowed on December 10th, 1993. He was sealed to his parents on March 12th, 1994, and he was also sealed to his wife, Eva Braun, on September 28th, 1993. And I already showed his actual temple recommend indexing card there. This is all documented. This is not a conspiracy theory.
Through these practices, Hitler was granted the opportunity for heavenly glory according to Mormon beliefs. It's important to note that in Mormon doctrine, individuals like Hitler are not condemned to eternal damnation. They are not considered sons of perdition. Being so wicked, they are cast into outer darkness. In summary, the Mormon faith's unique processes of posthumous baptism, endowment, and sealing offer an intriguing perspective on the afterlife of notorious figures. It emphasizes the belief in the availability of salvation for all, even those with a history of heinous deeds. This doctrine certainly provides food for thought, challenging conventional views of the afterlife and eternal judgment. So next time you find yourself pondering the fate of infamous figures in the afterlife, remember the unique perspective offered by the Mormon faith. It might just provide a new angle to your contemplations.
But most of all,
Hey, settle down. Take it easy. What the scout? I am Adolf Hitler, command of the Third Reich.
Holy cow, that is some video there. So let me ask you the question here, Big Chris. Is Adolf Hitler a Mormon?
Man, he was the worst. I don't know. I don't know. I'm past that, man. I just go get him.
Of course, the question is, did he accept his temple ordinances in the afterlife? Because that would make him a Mormon. And I'm joking around about this video, but it actually is kind of a bizarre video, to be honest with you, obviously. Because in Mormon theology, Adolf Hitler is probably telestial kingdom material, which is actually one of the degrees of heaven. But Chris, my understanding, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, is that people like you, who are returned missionaries and endowed members of the church and are not currently drinking the Kool-Aid, but instead are drinking coffee, that those are the only people who are eligible to actually go to outer darkness and hell. So you could possibly be in hell, but not Adolf Hitler. Do I have that correct?
I think it depends on what I do. That's why I don't have my name removed. Mostly because I'm just lazy, but there's that 1% chance, that it's all true, or maybe 2%. But you never know, man. Shoot, then I'm what do they say? Oh, you went 40 years and then you just kind of no, I don't think where I'm at right now qualifies me for outer darkness. I think you got to be I think you got to be real bad. I think you got to have like a podcast or something. Too soon? No, you might go, oh, Cultural Hall, definitely. He's going to burn.
Look, Chris, not all truths are useful. You know that, my friend, right? Okay, thanks for stopping by, Chris. I really appreciate you stopping by. Okay, buddy?
Anytime, man. All day. Let's go.
All right, thanks a lot. I really appreciate it. I'd like to welcome another program, Gene Judson. Gene, how you doing?
Doing okay. How are things with you?
Hey, doing great here. We covered in this particular episode the fact that the plaintiffs are getting, the church is trying to throw out the plaintiffs' lawsuit and the discovery here. Can you just give us a quick update, considering the fact that you are one of the primary people who is suing the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints to get your tithing back? Can you give us an update here?
So I haven't really kept up on the news, and also lately the lawyers have been, instructing me to not say too much. But what I did see from some of the shows is that the church says, oh, people that are suing us, since they're not believing now, they're not the same standing as people who are paying tithing currently. Well, everybody that paid tithing, whenever they paid it, thought they were doing the right thing, right?
Yeah,
so
definitely.
We're not talking about the future, right? We're talking about the past. So anyhow, it's kind of laughable, right? It almost would show that they don't really have much to go on. They don't have much of a leg to stand on. So they're, what do they call that? Grasping at straws. And I was wondering if I can talk about my new project I kicked off today.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
So I've done a couple of episodes calling them 1 minute Mormon stories, right? And so I've gotten Backyard Professor on, and I've gotten, let's see, I can't remember who the other release was. I think I released another one. Oh no, I just recorded, but I recorded 4 shows today, and I'm going to put another one out pretty soon tonight. I was waiting till your show was over before I put it out, but I'd like to actually invite listeners who want to contact me, and if they want to honor John DeLynn, wish him a happy birthday. He's turning 55 this week. And at the start of next month is going to be entering the 20th year of Mormon Stories. So I thought to honor them entering their 20th year, that I would, do this project. I'm going to try to do at least the top 100 until Christmas and see how it goes. But if people want to contact me with their favorite show, and I'm actually for viewers, I'm actually interested in maybe some of the less watched shows that was impactful for them, and if they could come on, which just a quick little, I do a little 1 minute synopsis, and then we talk for 5 minutes about how that show impacted them, in their faith journey, or to help clarify them post-mortem of their faith deconstruction. So anyway, you're doing a great job. I hope that I can get you on this week to do the same thing, unless you don't want to wish John a happy birthday.
Well, I will definitely wish him a happy birthday right now at this moment. And I did watch your episode there with the Backyard Professor. It was very interesting. I watched that today. It's a very interesting concept that you got going. Latter Daily Digest has a lot of interesting ideas. You're doing something out there that nobody is really doing. So there's a new space, and you got to 1,000 subscribers a heck of a lot faster than I did, Gene.
Well, I got some help, and it's not just my pretty face that was able to get all the subscribers. Maven did help me, do a lot of interviews. And like I say, I'm not the talent. It's all my guests that come on the show are the talent. And
yeah, in fact, you hosted an episode of the Mormon News Roundup once upon a time. It was a very good episode, without question. And I actually put together, I've got a video for everything out there. My top 10 favorite Mormon news moments, takes me back to, you made the top 10 list. I haven't released this episode, Gene, but we're going to give a sneak peek here because you made my top 10 list. I've got 1,000 videos on YouTube, Gene, but you made my top 10 list. What does that say about you?
That says I'm almost a unicorn.
I want to play that section, which is one of my favorite sections from the Mormon News Roundup, which is when you came on and you absolutely stuck it to me. And I definitely appreciate those people out there understand that I don't mind it when people stick it to me. Just like Chris said about the podcasting, I think that's great. Let me just play this. In fact, you're my number 1 hit here on my top 10. Let me pull this up here. One of my favorite episodes here. I really need to get the YouTube Premium going in here. I need some super chats to get me going on that. Hold on for a sec. Let's play that clip for my top 10 favorite moments of all time here. And you're right in that top 10.
It's gonna blow your freaking mind.
Welcome back to another episode of the Mormon News Roundup. I'm your humble host, D-Bays, and that's talent on loan from Kolob. This week, we're going to do the top 10 favorite moments in Mormon News Roundup history. This podcast has been around for almost 3 years, and thanks so much for watching. I've recorded almost 1,000 videos, and I really appreciate you for being here every step of the way. Let's take a look back over the archives, and I'm going to give you my top 10 most memorable and favorite moments in this podcast. Number 1, let's start with episode 68, in which I hosted Jacob Hansen of the... I thought you were going to be first up, but you weren't. You're actually second, so here we go. And the co-host sticks it to the host.
And it is...
There we go, sorry. Of Southern Virginia University, when Gene... Now, Gene and I were discussing Bonnie Corden's controversial selection as the new president of Southern Virginia University when Gene used his incredible priesthood discernment to notice that maybe I was feeling some sour grapes for not making the finalist list for SVU president. You know, it's always fun when the co-host sticks it to the host.
And it is, you know, a positive thing that a church, unofficial affiliated organization has picked a woman to lead. But there could be, you know, some LDS women that have much higher qualifications that are just maybe unknown to the general population. That would have been a better pick, but who knows?
Absolutely. There's plenty of women, as we're going to cover in one of our last articles here. BYU conference is coming up, a women's conference, which showcases some of the amazing women who are members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and have significant experience either in higher education or in the private sector. We're going to cover that later. That does not seem to apply to Bonnie Corden. Of course, it's a private university. They can hire whoever they want. There's a lot of things on this podcast that I talk about that I probably don't know what I'm talking about. Okay. You know, I'm just a seedless podcaster. What can I tell you? But I have spent a great deal of time in higher education. I taught at BYU Provo. I taught at the University of Utah. I taught at Salt Lake Community College. I taught at Utah Valley State College. I taught at Utah Valley University. I taught
You're hired.
I taught at the University of Phoenix. I taught at Western Governors University. I taught at a lot of places. So I guess this is the one of the few areas that I actually maybe could be considered an expert in this field. And when you bring someone into this situation with little objective experience, how are you supposed to generate confidence in your provost, in your academic vice presidents, in your department heads, in your deans, in the students? The students know who's qualified to be there. She has a bachelor's degree. She's only just barely ahead educationally of these students. Okay, how do you have credibility in this situation?
That's right, DBs. And it actually sounds like you're having a little bit of sour grapes. It sounds like you're upset that you were passed over for the job.
The truth hurts, Gene. The truth hurts. And you're hitting way too close to home, by the way. Way to put me in my place, Gene. Gene, do you normally stick it to your co-host on Latter Daily Digest like you stick it to me?
Sometimes it's off screen, but definitely it's not. You're not unique in that area. And so also I probably think that combined we might be 50 pounds lighter from that episode a year ago.
Yeah, I understand that you've been doing some serious weight loss out there. You're under 200 pounds. How's that going for you, Gene?
Well, I'm at about 203 right now because we've had some parties and birthdays and stuff, but let them eat cake, I said. So I ate cake. And so I got to do some more exercising over the next few days. But one thing I'll say is that you invited me to be a co-host on your show before I was anybody. Before I had a podcast, you invited me. And then you surprised Maven by saying, "Hey, I think you're starting a podcast." And she had to think on the fly, and she gave a really good response. And I asked you if I could use her response to help promote my show. And that's one of the areas where I was able to get like 20 subscribers before I even had a real show, just by borrowing from you that clip. So
well, first of all, nice job on the weight loss. That really means a lot. And we did record an episode on the Latter Daily Digest about both of our a little bit of our weight struggles here. And right now that episode is only available on Latter Daily Digest, but it's about facing death and pushing human limits. What was that episode all about that we recorded there, Gene?
So Latter Daily Digest is, about honoring creators. And in a way, we talked about your weight loss. And so what's the opposite of a creator? Like you were deconstructing yourself. And so we got into your background and the things that you had to do in order to lose your weight, and it was a triumph over the self, right? That's what the episode was pretty much about, because you were able to show what you could do when you put your mind to it. And that actually really inspired Maven. She spent like the next week cleaning up things and getting rid of things that were just like, she didn't lose any maybe personal weight, but she lost weight of her belongings, we'll say, that were dragging her down. So that was very inspirational for her.
Well, definitely glad to hear. And I got you on the Mormon News Roundup before you had a podcast. And I also got Maven on the Mormon News Roundup before you got a podcast. But the joke here is that both of you started the Latter Daily Digest right after you were both co-hosts of the Mormon News Roundup. And the joke here is that you saw the Mormon News Roundup and you said, you know what? Even we can do better than this guy. So I think I have get at least a little credit for the start of your podcast.
That's right. How many subscribers are you up to now?
I have at least 17 subscribers. Most of those are Chinese bots.
There you go. And so I'm going to predict by Christmas, we're going to pass you up. That's my prediction. We're going to see what happens.
Well, be careful, Gene. No unhallowed hand will stop this podcast from progressing. So tread carefully, my friend.
Better let you get to the other guests now. Bye-bye.
Thanks so much for coming on. Really appreciate you. It was a pleasure hosting you. And I think that's about it out there, folks. Really appreciate your time. Thanks for coming on. Tune in again Monday, tomorrow night. We got the Mormon movie reviews. Thursday night is going to be an epic SmackDown. It is going to be legendary. No one in the history of Ward Radio has released an episode like what I have released. I really feel, honestly, folks, like I have prepared my entire life for this video. It was 6 months in the making. It took approximately 20 hours, but it really represents a lifetime of learning in order to be able to give the kind of response. It's not only the Mormon knowledge, it's also the Christian knowledge that was necessary. It's the editing skills, and it's also the time and the dedication. I could not do it unless all of you were there with me. It's going to be a great ride. I really appreciate Gene and everyone else who came on. Kulch, thanks a lot. Doug, once again, really appreciate it. Theodos, really appreciate it. You had Chinese bot. That is great. And Songs of Our Own. We'll catch up about Southern Virginia University some other time. Remember, folks, always think celestial, and no unhallowed hand can stop this podcast from progressing. So long.